All right, 5, 4, 3, 2.
8. It did again. Hello and welcome to the Maggot Show. I am Maggot. Apparently we have a kid on the line. It's Tony Blair. Hello, I'm Tony Blair. I've always admired Maggot, especially on cam. I can't hear anybody. I love to watch maggots on cam. 5-year-old boys. Oh, you're not recording this, are you? Oh dear. Oh, is that going to go in your memoirs, Tony? Maybe in the sequel. No, I just got Mr. Very Noisy Mick in the background. Okay. See,
I can't believe you just called it a Mick. Seriously, you called a Mike a Mick?
No, I say Mr. Noisy Mick.
Yeah, you said a Mick. I don't even know what the hell you're... See, that's some UK crazy shit.
That's microphone.
We do have the new host on. He's going to be doing some of the swing shifts here until we can get a permanent spot for Tony. His name is Tony Stewart. He is on the back line. He'll be joining in ever so often. We're going to get him on. He'll probably be doing the 6 o'clock spot tonight. So, Tony, make sure if you're listening to have some stuff ready because you're going to be doing a 6 o'clock show for a whole hour today on the swing shift week until we get a permanent lineup for you. All right, now I'm going to put you back to your regular daily programming here at the Informed Radio with the Maggot Show.
Yeah, I'm still not quite sure if I've got co-host in this one, but whatever. I'll just start reading. I've just got some news for a change. Yes, there's been some news somewhere. Merkel. Okay, this is the Independent. This is actually from Saturday, but I think it's quite funny. Merkel ally quits after claiming Nazis didn't start war. In Poland, she remains Germany's most hated living politician, even more so than Hitler. Her unashamedly revanchist political views once prompted a Warsaw News magazine to portray her on its front cover, clad in a sinister swastika-covered Nazi SS uniform. Probably really boosted sales. They probably think she's really hot. Oh, I love the... she's a sexy bitch. I can't remember what German is for woman. Sexy Frau or something. But yesterday, Erika Steinbach, probably the last surviving bête noire in Chancellor Angela Merkel's Conservative government, black woman for some reason, I think, black femme, black woman, whatever, but took the first step towards bowing out of politics altogether after she started an explosive row over who was to blame for starting the Second World War. Mrs. Steinbach, 67, announced her formal departure from the leadership of Ms. Merkel's Christian Democratic Party after enraging Germany's Central Council of Jews by inferring that Hitler's invasion of Poland in 1939 was merely a response to Poland's military mobilization earlier that year. Yeah, they put a stick on a horse. That's what it was. It's the military mobilization of Poland in 1939. Pointy stick on a horse. I am beginning to get the impression that you can't say what you want in Germany anymore, even if one is talking about facts, is how the veteran right-winger responded to criticism from within her own party and its Liberal coalition partners about her remarks. A Polish government spokesman said her comments were identical to Nazi propaganda. Historians hasten to point out that Poland's mobilization in 1939 was a response to the Nazi regime's massive rearmament program, but Mrs. Steinbach maintained she had made her remarks to support her own organization, Germany's 2 million member Expellees Association, which represents the estimated 12.5 million Germans who were forced out of Eastern Europe after 1945. As the long-serving president of the association, Mrs. Steinbach said she had been backing 2 members of her board. In the back room, something. Days earlier, they had first made remarks about Poland's mobilization contributing to the start of the Second World War. Mrs. Steinbach had refused to distance herself from their comments. The Expellees Association was set up after 1945 to represent the millions of Germans who were forcibly evicted from their homes in former German territories that now belong to Russia, Poland and the Czech Republic. Poland and the Czech Republic have been irked by the association's demand that they formally apologise for the post-war expulsion of Germans. They have also been angered by demands that they provide compensation for confiscated German properties or offer Germans a right to return. In the Czech Republic, Václav Havel, the former president and dissident playwright, is reputed to have refused to speak to Mrs. Steinbach because of her association's stance. I'm a little teapot or something. More recently, the Expellees have been the source of a blistering row with the government of the late Polish president Lech Kaczynski. Yes. It's not Lake Kaczynski, but spelled L-E-C-H. It's Kaczynski Lake. Over its plans to open a museum dedicated to explaining their plight. Mrs. Steinbach maintains that Victor's justice has prevailed on the expellee issue. In 2008, she told The Independent, "It is especially the wartime victor countries like Britain that have difficulty in accepting the plight of the German expellees." Yesterday, some members of Mrs. Merkel's party voiced fears that Mrs. Steinbach's departure under a cloud. Yes. She has the ability to make clouds appear and disappear. From the Christian Democrats leadership board represented a worrying break with the Expellees Association, which would not only lose the party votes but open the way for the formation of a new right-wing German party. Oh, didn't we already have one of those? Wasn't it called the Nazi Party? I don't know. Maybe a new super Nazi party. Extra drugs. But many others pointed out that the ageing expellee groups were beginning to lose influence. They interpreted Mrs. Steinbach's resignation as an important victory for Ms. Merkel, who has suffered her as an uncomfortable party bedfellow. For the past decade, opinion polls have shown that most Germans no longer have much sympathy for expellees. Yeah, so that's it's an association of people who are expelled from from various places by Russia, Poland, and the Czech Republic after the Second World War. Even though it's supposedly got a membership of millions. Yeah, 12.5 million Germans were forced out of Eastern Europe after 1945. Steinbach's cause, the group has reopened open wounds. Germany's Expellees Association. The group was set up in the aftermath of the Second World War to represent the interests of the estimated 12.5 million Germans who were driven out of Central and Eastern Europe from the end of 1945. As the Soviet Red Army advanced, millions of Germans were forced out of the former East Prussia. Millions more ethnic Germans were later expelled from Poland and the former Czechoslovakia. Most expellees fled to West Germany, in some parts accounting for nearly a quarter of the population. Germany's conservative Christian Democratic Party said that they should be offered a political home within the party, but its failure to mention the Holocaust in its charter, its demands for an apology from the Polish and Czech governments, and its calls for compensation have continued to hurt Germany's relations with its neighbours. Even after the collapse of communism in 1989. Okay, next article. Independent again. It's another one from Saturday, actually, but never mind. Police cleared of electrocuting youths. Prosecutors want to drop a highly sensitive case against 2 police officers accused of being responsible for the fatal electrocution of 2 Parisian teenagers. Bouna Traore, 15, and Zaid Benna, 17, died in a power substation in the suburb of Clichy-sous-Bois in October 2005 while hiding from police. Their deaths set off nationwide riots. I doubt they did really, but never mind. Might have been for something completely different. But we had some spare footage that we decided to put up and told you that was the reason they did it. No. But the local prosecutor's office has submitted a request to drop the charges because of lack of evidence. A judicial official said it is now up to investigating judges whether to accept that request. Lawyers for the victims' family said such a move would give police license to act with impunity. License to kill. Sort of a science article now. Revenge of the nerds. Should we listen to futurists, or are they leading us towards nerdocalypse? They're building robots. They're making us immortal. They're hanging out with Stevie Wonder. Somebody has to do that, I suppose. And getting off on fruit fly porn. Okay, fine. They've obviously got brains like insects. These are the visionary thinkers who can make our future bright, and these are the ties that bind them. It looks like it's going into a song, but are they leading us all towards nerdocalypse? As night thickens around Marina Boulevard on a murky San Francisco evening, one thing is crystal clear: the future is not what it used to be. The wildest, most mind-frazzling visions of the years ahead are no longer the sole preserve of science fiction. At least it seems that way at a reception to mark the start of the 2010 Singularity Summit, the world's leading forum for serious discussion of incredible things to come, here in a plush and spacious apartment not far from the Golden Gate Bridge. Yeah, the monkeys jumped off. Scientists, academics and futurists, bankrolled by the Silicon Valley dollar, are discussing what many among them believe to be an imminent and radical transformation of the human experience. This sea change, caused by monumental advances in technology, has a name: the Singularity. It also has a dedicated and well-informed fan base, the Singularitarians. They all speak like that as well sometimes. The reception is in full swing. Next to the open bar, the professional rationalist is rubbing shoulders with the preeminent neurobiologist, and the scenario forecaster is exchanging ideas with the cutting-edge nanotechnologist, as notions once thought too outlandish to merit serious consideration, such as beyond human intelligence, immortality, and godlike omniscience. Yes, like I have. Are we obsessed in the cool light of possibility? Yesterday's tech-obsessed fantasist is today's credible expert. A new dynamic cross-discipline geek community is visibly taking shape as the buzz of highbrow chatter fills the room like pipe tobacco in an early 20th century Vienna coffee house. Michael Vassar, summit host and president of the Singularity Institute for Artificial Intelligence, reduces the future to 2 competing scenarios. Either you and everyone you love are going to be killed by robots that I command with my mouse, or you are going to live forever. Yeah, I added some bits. I installed a little chip on him to add bits into what he says. Some very clever people, he says, with a hint of mischief, and a disconcerting flash of clear-eyed sincerity, can make a strong case for each of these arguments. So it's in our best interest to pay attention. This is like sort of like the friendly face for the transhumanist society, I suppose. I'm expecting they're going to get mentioned later on. Looking around, the friendly robot face with a cyborg eye. Looking around the apartment, which was borrowed for the evening from the billionaire venture capitalist Peter Thiel, SIAI backer and co-founder of PayPal. Vassar points out a couple of the summit's keynote speakers. There's the Canadian inventor Steve Mann, the world's first cyborg who's wearing a black woolly hat and computer-enhanced eyeglasses. Oh, that's an outrageous comparison. I don't wear eyeglasses. And over by the dessert table, Ben Gutzel, who has been called the badass of the artificial intelligence community, and looks as though he's been blown off course on the way to Glastonbury. Bleeding hippie. Over the following 2 days in... I'm looking for it. Oh, in the conference hall at the Hyatt Regency Hotel, these and other invited experts add their latest insights and thoughts to a concept first suggested in the 1950s by information theorist John von Neumann, expanded on during the 1980s and 1990s by computer scientist Werner Wing, and carried enthusiastically through to the 21st century by current singularitarian-in-chief inventor Ray Kurzweil. The singularity is a metaphorical term used to express the transformative moment when technology has moved so rapidly that the human race can never be the same again. This could be a good thing, according to Kurzweil, if we avoid the dangers of genetics, nanotechnology, and robotics, then succeed in harnessing artificial intelligence to conquer mortality, and accept the next transhuman phase of our evolution. Yeah, that's the other people who conquer morality. Yeah. Or it could all go badly wrong, resulting in what some have called the Nerdocalypse. In Kurzweil's estimation, we should know either way by 2045. Oh, that's encouraging. It's only 35 years to sit around waiting while they pack chips into your face. It's that sense of imminence and immediacy that has made the singularity such a passionately contested proposition. You see, they should have more songs about it, like Fifth Element. They should recruit the Fifth Element. They could do a song about the singularity to follow up the age of Aquarius, and attracted interest and investment from extremely wealthy and intelligent individuals, as well as Google and NASA, which have each put money into Singularity University, co-founded by Kurzweil, near San Jose. An early hit at the summit is biophysicist and entrepreneur Gregory Stock, who enthuses the paying audience of future followers with statements such as, "Science has slammed the evolutionary process into fast forward." Oh no, not that one again. And evolution is itself evolving. Reparaphrasing that old phrase. Before advising everyone to drink more coffee, based on the promising gene research he oversaw as chief executive of Signum Biosciences, and suggesting that we should not underestimate the current state of progress. I thought he was going to explain why they should drink more coffee. I don't care if he did some research. It doesn't prove anything, just saying he's done research. Don't say whether it's good for you or bad for you. This is big stuff that's happening. That's a quote. He elicits a communistic chuckle by showing pictures of a gratuitous sex featuring worms, beetles, squids and flies. Okay, yeah, reference to Maggot. As precursor to his notion of a planetary superorganism. Planetary superorgasm would be more interesting. Away from the podium, Stock elaborates. What's really freeing is If you walk through a city and think of it as purely biological, that there isn't a contradiction between flesh and biology and technology. It's the manifestation of biology creating this entity, this superorganism, a city. You have to be awestruck that it actually works. The broad concept of a city is also central to understanding the AI theories of Demis Hassabis, who earned a double first in computer science at Cambridge, in England, before trading his career in the video game industry for a job in cognitive neuroscience at University College London. Hassabis wants to enable computers to learn not just language, but complex abstractions. It's 2-player games on Tetris. I'm interested in how we build the concept of a city. It's a really rich representation. You're thinking of size, tons of people, cathedrals, the actual concept. I don't know why I bothered mentioning cathedrals. Cathedrals don't have any future in cities. Basically, yeah, we must have those cathedrals so we can all worship God that we don't believe in. Basically, I think that there are going to be some amazing breakthroughs by 2020. Oh no, because we really appreciate the architecture, even though there's absolutely no future for appreciation of art in the future. Hassabis confesses that while he's interested in the singularity, he himself is not a singularitarian. Maybe it's because of my British side, but it's a bit Californian, I think. Potentially that's the ultimate thing we might have to deal with if anything we do in AI works. But I think we're so far away from that, and so far away from anything being dangerous or sentient, that we need to do a lot more work first, before we can properly analyse what the dangers might be. Goatsaw is not as sure as Hassabis that we should relax. I would be among the least shocked people if we had the singularity in 2015, he says, before qualifying that thought with... Well, he's speaking his thoughts. I don't believe he is. I think he's just following a script. I also would be amazed if it was delayed to 2100, because some technologies prove hard to work through all the details. Either way, he thinks the singularity is coming. But what's it going to look like? There's a dichotomy, says Gutzel, between people such as Ray Kurzweil, who see the kinder, gentler singularity, which makes the future much like it is today, but without disease and without scarcity. And everyone's frolicking in the fields. And Werner Vitch, who says, once we've got a being... Huh?
Maggot, you used the word frolicking seriously.
Yeah.
Sir,
Frolicking.
what's wrong with you UKers? God.
I'm quoting. I know, but he's taking...
You used
He was being...
this.
You can't... he's being sarcastic about Ray Kurzweil. It's quite obvious. It's like, frolicking in the fields just means talking bollocks. It's a little phrase. Frolicking in the fields.
You said the word.
Frolic!
I knew you were going to say
Frolic.
I know you said bollock. That's worse.
Yeah, frolic.
Bollocks is worse.
Does it sound like bollocks when I say frolic?
Frolics, bollocks. I don't know what it sounds like, man. It just sounds gibberish.
Yeah. Yeah, he used to take the piss out of Ray Kurzweil.
I can't jump in every now and again to make fun of the maggot.
Yeah.
What is...
But I make fun out of the news, so I don't care, really.
All right, bud. I'm jumping back out. Awesome show. Maggot, real quick, everybody. Maggot's probably going to be doing the 5 o'clock hour. So if you like Maggot's show here, he'll be filling in for the 5 o'clock hour tonight. And you should come by and check that one out, because he'll probably not have any material for that one. So it's going to probably just be really, really funny.
Oh dear, yeah. I know. I'll get round it. I forgot my accent now. And Werner Vinge, who says, once we've got a being 10 times as smart as us, all bets are off. I'm a bit more inclined towards Minge's views and Ray's. I'm hoping for the best. and will work towards a positive outcome. I feel like Ray and some others downplay the irreducible uncertainty of creating things massively more capable than us. Roboticist David Hansen has been discussing with Kurtzel some of the some of the reasons why there hasn't been something like an Apollo program funded by the government. Don't ask too many pointed questions. Funded by the government to achieve human-level cognition in machines. We're still getting over the disaster of the Apollo program. Ben said he thought it was people were scared of these machines. Starting the quote with Ben said he thought, oh, great. Ben said he thought it was because people were scared of these machines, and I said that if people felt that the machines were friends and lovable, they wouldn't be scared. Just like Steven Spielberg was trying to push. To address that fear, Hansen makes robots he calls empathy machines, because if we don't feel like they're part of our family, then we're going to pick a fight with them. And the smarter they get, the more dangerous it will be to pick fights. Steve Mann, still wearing his intelligent spectacles, demonstrates another way the man-machine gulf can be bridged by playing House of the Rising Sun on what looks like, this is a song by the Eagles, isn't it, I think, on what looks like a cross between a synthesizer and a bird bath. He creates music by placing his fingers on small jets of water. It's less an attempt to soundtrack the future than a way to show how the hard digital world can seem less alien, more tactile. Although Mann shames a claim to world's first cyborg status with the University of Reading's Kevin Warwick, oh yeah, I remember him, he assures me he's been modifying himself since childhood. If all cyborgs and robots end up as affable, enthusiastic and musical as man, the face of the singularity, should it ever show itself, will not appear too daunting. But all the speakers at the summit agree that, however the future unfolds, we're sure to have plenty to think about. For instance, with the promise of advanced AI comes the possibility of radical life extension, even immortality, after we banished all bodily ills and uploaded ourselves to a hard drive. In case he doesn't live to see that day, Gertzel has signed up for a cryonic suspension so that he can be revived and rebooted in the transhuman post-singularity era. Hansen has hedged his bets, saying that to be a transhumanist is to humbly realise that there is a future that exists beyond us. Stock, on the other hand, acknowledges that the human lifespan will most likely be modified. Sort of surname Stock is sort of like giving away what you are, in a good way, but says that it won't really matter to him. I don't think I will quite make it, he admits, before urging us to take a step back for a second and relish the fact that he is dying. In the broader picture, we live in incredible times. Drink this stuff! Imbibe of it! When you really penetrate into this stuff, it's absolutely mind-boggling. People should be taking pleasure in that. Oh, transhumanism's mentioned. Transhumanism. It's humanism on steroids, explains Max Moore. It's a view that we can improve the human condition, yes. Things like mortality, the inevitability of death, the limited capacity of our brains, the primitive state of our emotional systems. Extropy, the opposite of the natural tendency towards disorder and decay. Just puts in a word in its definition for no reason in the middle of a sentence almost. Extropy is the opposite of the natural tendency towards disorder and decay, which is called entropy. I'm having to add words to this. It's about increasing levels of a system's intelligence, its vitality, its experience, and its capacity and drive for improvement, says Moore. Yeah, so it's called Moore, so he always wants more. Great. More technology. the singularity, the point at which accelerating technology profoundly changes human existence. Yeah, okay. Just putting another definition in there. Bibliography inserted into all reports in the future. Ray Kurzweil believes it will arrive in around 2045. Ben Goertzel won't be surprised if it arrived by 2015. I'll read out a few of the characters and quotes from them. Ray Kurzweil, age 62, born New York, lives in Boston. Big idea, reverse engineering the brain. Quote, our tools for repairing into our brains are improving at an exponential pace. Stuart Brand, age 71, born Illinois, lives San Francisco. Big idea, whole earth discipline. Quote, we are as gods and have to get good at it. Demis Hassabis, age 34, born London, lives London. Big idea, hybrid systems, neuroscience. Quote, there are spaceships being launched all over the place right now, so how about launching a few into the mind? Larry Brilliant, age 66. Yeah, it's a name for like a Marvel superhero, isn't it? Larry Brilliant. Age 66, born Detroit, lives in San Francisco. Big idea, teleological technology. Yeah, you know he's going to be like a crazy scientist with a name like Larry Brilliant. Quote, if you don't have a world that builds technology for the purpose of making life better, then technology is not the answer. David Hansen, age 40, born Dallas, lives in Dallas. Big idea, character robotics. Quote, I think we can achieve something like human creative genius in machines between 10 and 20 years from now, maybe sooner. Ben Goertzel, age 43, born Rio de Janeiro, lives in Washington. Big idea, artificial biology. Quote, artificial biologists will ultimately abolish involuntary death. Max Moore, age 46, born Bristol, lives in Austin, Texas. Big idea, dynamic optimism. Quote, I'm hoping not to age and die. Gregory Stock, age 60, born LA, lives Princeton. Big idea, the planetary superorganism. To quote, things are going to get very weird relatively quickly. And it's got profiles and all of them, but I didn't bother reading out that bit because a bit boring. A futurist glossary, transhumanism. It's humanism on steroids, explains Max Moore. It's a view that we can improve the human condition. Things like mortality, the inevitability of death, limited capacity of our brains, the primitive states of our emotional systems, as I quoted earlier. Extropy, the opposite of the natural tendency towards disorder and decay. It's about increasing levels of a system's intelligence, its vitality, its experience, and its capacity and drive for improvement, says Moore. He's got a very similar way of writing things. The singularity, the point at which accelerating technology profoundly changes human existence. Ray Kurzweil believes it will arrive in around 2045. Ben Goertzel wouldn't be surprised if it arrived by 2015. BBC, Ricky Hatton. I don't know who that is, I don't really care. Well, Ricky Hatton aimed his rehabilitation after drugs claims, but he's a boxer, so what? BBC unions set strike dates over pension changes. The BBC's main unions have announced strike dates in a dispute over proposed changes to the corporation's pension schemes. Dates for a strike have been set for 5 and 6 October, coinciding with the Conservative Party conference. Members of BECTU, the NUJ and Unite will first be consulted on the latest proposal from the BBC, which was presented earlier on Monday. If this is also unacceptable to the membership, the strikes will go ahead. Further action is scheduled for 19th of October, which coincides with the government's comprehensive spending review. The developments followed formal discussions with the BBC about the latest plans to cut the pension deficit. The BBC said in a statement, "We are disappointed that the unions have announced dates for industrial action. We believe our pension proposals address concerns raised by staff and that they should now have the opportunity to fully consider and explore them within the context of an ongoing consultation rather than the threat of a strike. Greater contribution. Under the new plan offered to staff, pensions will be based on average pay over career and will therefore reflect fully any future pay rises. The original proposal allows for pensionable pay to rise by a maximum of 1% a year regardless of changes in earnings. However, employees will have to work to the age of 65 rather than 60. They will also have to put a greater proportion of their salary into a pension pot. Leaders of the three unions said the new proposals, although an improvement on the previous one, were still not good enough. An email to be sent to members of the NUJ on Tuesday said, that's probably the National Union of Journalists, said the union did not believe the BBC had made a sufficient case for making changes to the current pension arrangements. It questions the BBC's assessment of the pension deficit, saying, "We are deeply sceptical of the BBC's figures." Deficit. In June, the BBC announced plans to overhaul its pension scheme to try to tackle an estimated £2 billion deficit. The corporation said the changes were essential to tackle the ballooning deficit in the pension scheme, which stood at $470 million 2 years ago. These proposals included imposing a cap of 1% a year on the amount by which pensionable salaries of existing members could grow. Alternatively, they could leave the existing defined benefit schemes and join a new defined contribution scheme, which is also being offered to new recruits. Earlier this month, it was announced that BBC staff members had voted in favour of strike action in response to these plans. Yeah, because this will be fairly boring and trivial, but there's like people going on strike in the BBC, and these are like, actual people you see on TV, newsreaders and stuff like that, I expect. Wait until I get further into the article. I might give actual names of people who are striking. And even then, if it isn't, it's going to affect the programming. So, look more budgety or something. There'll be cameramen on strike and lighting engineers or whatever on strike. So it will just affect the quality. And so you notice it'll start looking like a bit rubbish. And then Russia Today will take over. Just absorb BBC. Beck 2 and the National Union of Journalists said more than 90%, a media invasion from Russia, of members had voted for a walkout. But the unions postponed the decision on whether to strike for 2 weeks while it discussed alternative proposals with the BBC. No panacea. The fresh plans, which BBC Director General Mark Thompson set out in an email to staff on Monday, suggest adding an extra option of a pension based on a career average of salary. Employees could leave the three defined benefit schemes, 2 final salary versions and an existing career average section, and join the so-called CAB 2011 scheme. Its benefits would be based on average pay from joining the new section until the end of working for the BBC. There would be no cap on how far this average pay could grow if members received pay rises or were promoted. However, these employees would have to pay higher contributions than those in the current career average scheme, which is due to close to new members. Contributions would be 7%. Compared with 4% in the current CAB scheme. I'll finish it off. I thought it was going to get more interesting. Pension would accrue at a rate of 1.67% of salary per year, and members would see their pensions increase each year at the lower of the rise in the Consumer Prices Index of 2.5%. It is not a panacea, but in the terms I have set out above, it is affordable. And I believe it goes a significant way to addressing the concerns you've expressed to us during the consultation, Mr. Thompson said. Just look, there's an article on a Guardian paper, and we've got big ears on the cover of the Guardian. Oh, can you guess who? I love cheese. Maybe cheese. Royal pressure led to FOI ban on disclosure. FOI. Oh, I don't know. He'll explain. It'll be a paper anyway. FOI ban on disclosure of lobbying by Charles Guardian to go to tribunal to gain access to letters to ministers, while Act amendments may mean 20-year block on letters. Pressure from the royal family led government ministers to enforce a blanket ban on the disclosure of Prince Charles's lobbying campaigns. It has been claimed royals with aides successfully pressed the government to tighten up the Freedom of Information Act to ensure that in the future there is no chance his lobbying will be made public under the legislation for 20 years or 5 years after his death, whichever is longer. The royals had felt very strongly that the act was too weak and demanded extra protection to conceal Charles's behind-the-scenes interventions in public affairs, according to Whitehall sources. Details of the royal pressure had come to light as the Guardian goes to a Freedom of Information tribunal tomorrow in an attempt to gain access to letters the Prince has written to ministers. Don't call me gay, and that sort of thing. If the Guardian wins the case, it would be the first time the government has been ordered to disclose Charles's letters under the Act. That'd be quite interesting. It might turn out into a big scandal. So you might be saying, whatever you do, don't talk about the Maggot. Don't talk about him. He's far too important. He's much bigger than me. I can't stand him. He knows too much. Because that's how he talks. For 5 years, ministers have resisted the Guardian's Freedom of Information request for a set of the Prince's letters from 2004 and 2005. And yeah, basically they're worried that he's been meddling with government business. Somebody like him could easily could have like the influence to put pressure on MPs and stuff in order to get his agenda through, because they're quite into Agenda 21 and all that sort of stuff and greening the planet. The coalition government is spending in the region of £75,000 on barristers to win the tribunal. The Prince has been regularly accused for meddling in the affairs of governments by sending a barrage of letters to ministers. The letters containing his strongly held views have been dubbed Black Spider memos because of his handwriting. Charles has been accused of using his privileged position over the last 4 decades to influence government policies on subjects such as diverse, as the Human Rights Act, hunting, and alternative medicine. That's going to mean like marijuana and stuff, I guess. A senior Ministry of Justice source said the palace had been uncomfortable for some time, piles, about the Freedom of Information Act after it came into force in 2005 and began expressing their concerns to civil servants. Check the chat room. Okay, great. I haven't now got time to read all that at the same time trying to read out this. Under the Act, the public has a chance of viewing Charles's letters if their disclosure could be shown in the public interest. Got some music coming through in the background there. Although none has been disclosed so far, there has been a
Maggot, I'm sorry. I got my Sam's aunt just wrote on the thing about she was disappointed in not being able to go to the Jay-Z and Eminem concert.
All right.
So and it's like a family member of my wife's. So I have to, oh God, what's the word? Bombard her with the truth right now. So I'm flooding her thing.
Okay.
So. I'm sorry if you hear music coming through. That's just me getting stuff to bombard a sheep.
Oh,
That's
yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, alternative rap or whatever. Yeah, great. Okay, although none has been disclosed so far, there has been a possibility that they could be released if it can be proved that the prince had directly affected government policy. You call me a wanker? Yes. An opportunity for the wanker, meddler, masturbator, somebody masturbates figures, blah 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 blah. An opportunity for the prince to do something about this came last year when the Daily Mail editor Paul Dacre, or Dacre, I suppose, heading, not daycare. Maybe he feels like he's working in a daycare centre. He has to speak to Prince Charles. Tomato. Heading a committee appointed by the then Prime Minister Gordon Browneye, recommended that old government records should be released after 15 years instead of the traditional 30. This change would have required legislation in order to be implemented, the ministry source said. Paul Dacre had some sort of vague words that if it was brought down to 15 years, some other changes might need to be made in the Act. The civil service spot these kinds of subclauses in a massive report. One little subclause, and see this opportunity to pour through it. After many arguments within Whitehall, a deal was struck. The secrecy surrounding old government records would be liberalised so that they could be made public earlier than before, but at the same time there would be a block on the disclosure of correspondence between the government and the monarch, the heir to the throne or the next in line, regardless of the public interest. The gag would apply for 20 years or 5 years after the death of the royal in question, whichever was longer. The proposal, inserted into a larger bill about constitutional reform, was rushed through Parliament with minimal debate in the dying days of the last government after the general election was called. Then Justice Minister Jack Straw told MPs that there had been an error in the drafting of the original Act. The then Labour MP Tony Wright called it the Prince Charles Amendment. Yes, the Prince Charles meddling. A royal spokeswoman said, "The royal household was consulted by government on the changes to the Freedom of Information Act, but as with all official matters, the royal household relied on the advice of Her Majesty's ministers with regards to the issue." The block is not yet in force, and so does not rule out the Guardian's request, which is being considered by this week's tribunal. The royals and their supporters argue that Charles's letters should not be made public because he has the right to be educated in the business of government before he ascends to the throne, and which this allows him to make his views known to ministers and debate with them, where he's not, is he? He's just writing letters saying, I want you to do this, I want you to do that, and they're saying you can't do that. But I want you to. But you can't. Yeah, but I'm going to be king. Well, you're not the king yet. Yeah, but I will be. Yeah, but you're not. But I know what you did last summer. According to Constitution Convention, they say...
Oh my God! I'll tell you what, man. This really is best hour every morning, every day at 3 o'clock. I sit here and I listen to your show, Mac.
Yeah.
And I piss myself a little every day. Every day.
You got what I was getting at. They're bullshitted by saying he's understanding the workings of government. It's nothing to do with that. He's just threatening them in these letters. He's just pushing his own way down their throats, and he's saying he's going to become king and like he's going to have stuff on them. I can't imagine he's really a sophisticated person. He's got the personality of a plank of wood, apparently. According to Constitutional Convention, they say the monarch and heir have a duty and right to counsel, encourage and warn his or her government in complete confidentiality so that his or her political neutrality is not or does not appear to be compromised. The Guardian argues that the public should be allowed to know whether the prince has been secretly influencing the government. Publication of the letters would enable the public to judge if he is interfering too much, and if ministers have been given too much weight to his views, said The Guardian. This week's tribunal in central London will decide whether to release Charles' correspondence. That'll be something like, he could just like lose his opportunity to become king. What a shame! Yeah, it's like be something like gross misconduct or something, meddling with the affairs of government, with ministers in 7 Whitehall departments between September 2004 and April 2005. Because he's only a prince. I mean, you know, he might be in line to the throne and all that rubbish, but so what? He's only a prince. They are the Cabinet Office departments of Business, Health, Schools, Environment, Culture, and Northern Ireland. It's like sort of like Howard, the rest of the Parliament, like if Prince William and Prince Harry or whatever, just like writing them letters all the time, say don't talk about this, don't talk about that. You want you to focus on this. It's like just like they just want to send responses back like, what the hell's it got to do with you? You know. But he thinks he can get away with it because he's older. I'm more royal than the rest of them. I'm more posh than what the rest of them are. Okay. Next article in The Guardian. Berlusconi jokes about Hitler at youth rally. Silvio Berlusconi urged to apologise after impromptu speech in which he also advises young Italians to marry into money. Faced with a tottering economy and a crumbling coalition government, Silvio Berlusconi has chosen to woo a youth rally with jokes about Adolf Hitler and his own sexual prowess, appearing relaxed, if a little pale, before a crowd of cheering supporters. So yesterday, the frequently outspoken and gaffe-prone Italian Prime Minister promised to see out the end of his term, despite losing his guaranteed majority after a split with an ally, Gianfranco Fini. Putting politics aside, he then launched into a series of anecdotes and apparent jokes that promptly drew accusations of anti-Semitism and even mental instability from opposition politicians. There is a video link to that.
What did he say? The Zionist? What was he talking about? Zionist or something?
It hasn't got.
That sounds like something they say about us.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. It does say he jokes about Hitler. I haven't got to it yet. So there's I have a video link for it. I might have to do it on the next show, but you could just preload it or something.
Yeah, might have to check that out later. That's find out what they're saying. 'Cause, I mean, that just seems you know, I don't know. It seems a little fishy.
Yeah.
It seems like anybody that ever says anything about 9/11 or about Israel is, oh, you're anti-Semitic. Oh, you're a fucking aluminum foil hat wearing crazy person. I mean, why?
Yeah.
Why am I?
Yeah.
I don't understand. Proof is there. The proof is in the pudding. There's that saying again. I don't even know what it means. But the proof. Hey, are you going to do the 5 o'clock? You're going to do that 5 o'clock spot, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you can actually replay that in the 5. You can actually talk about that in the 5 o'clock spot then.
Well, yeah. If you preload it, then you can have that on the 5 o'clock spot. That's all right, I suppose. I could do that.
How long is it?
I don't know. It's on the advert at the moment.
Well, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
I think I'd much rather just hear you talk for an hour. But
yeah, I know. It's only going to be a minute long anyway. That clip. I don't know how long it's going to be.
That'll work then.
Yeah.
So
you got to
right.
You got to preload it past the advert, but I can't play the advert in the background while I'm talking.
Right. Well, I don't know how that would work. Just I guess send me over the link.
Oh, I
can
did.
Play it through there.
I did.
Okay, I'll have it keyed up and ready to go for the 5 o'clock. Also up next, Vertex. He's the new guy from yesterday. He's one of you. He's a UKan, just like Maggot here. He'll be doing the next show. So, you like back to back UK here. Back to back UK. Unbelievable.
Just take over everywhere. I took over the Joe Blow show with English people. Then it was American Freeman. Then it was now it's this one. Yeah, Informed Radio. We're taking over. So yeah, though one of them was Caribbean, claimed to be Caribbean. He's still English, speaking English. Okay. Putting politics aside, he then launched into a series of anecdotes and apparent jokes that promptly drew accusations of anti-Semitism and even mental instability from opposition politicians. The former cruise ship entertainer told a joke in which Adolf Hitler is begged by his supporters to return to power after they discover he is still alive. After resisting, Hitler says, "I'll come back, but on one condition. Next time, I'm going to be evil." Fabio Evangelisti, a member of parliament for the opposition Italy of Values Party, demanded Berlusconi apologise to Israel and the Italian Jewish community. The party's leader, Antonio Di Pietro, said, "At this point, the problem is not political or judicial, but psychiatric." It's an old joke. I've heard that joke for a while. Turning his attention to the economy. Yeah, it's pro Hitler, but you can't really say anything else about it apart from that. Turning his attention to the economy, Berlusconi jokingly advised young Italians to marry into money. You see, because it's Italian youth, Hitler youth. He's sort of like drawing into the whole Mussolini, I don't know what you call it, meme, racial memory, whatever. Anyhow, he jokingly advised young Italians to marry into money, adding, "I have a daughter who is free to marry." Now separated from his wife following the scandal over his friendship with the teenage model Naomi Letizia. Berlusconi said he was also eligible candidate for 4 reasons. "I am friendly, I have money, legend has it, I know how to do it. And lastly, because girls think, he's old and rich, he will die soon, and I will inherit everything." The poor performance over the weekend of AC Milan, the football club he controls, was down to our left wing Jeffrey disallowing goals, Berlusconi jokes. The impromptu speech followed a visit to Russia on Friday, where he surprised the audience at a conference on democracy with a fierce attack on Italian magistrates he claims are hounding him. He said of Vladimir Putin, "I have never had any doubts that he is anything less than democratically minded." Putin and Russian President Dmitry Medvedev, Berlusconi added, were a gift from God to Russia. Last month, Berlusconi took time to defend Muammar Gaddafi after the Libyan leader told an invited audience of 200 women in Rome that Islam should be Europe's religion. And then you could all be circumcised. When the speech prompted outcry from the Vatican, Berlusconi dismissed Gaddafi's behaviour as merely folkloric. Berlusconi, 73, has previously been criticised for calling Barack Obama young, handsome and tanned. Okay, just can't say anything, obviously. And last year...
He called him...
He called him what?
He called him tan.
Tanned, yeah.
What do you call him?
Tanned.
Oh,
well, that's ridiculous. You get a tan, yeah, I know. He's saying he's a white guy that's got a tan, I guess. I mean, if you want to interpret it as an insult, but a tan is just something you get, Oh, I don't know. Yeah, he's going to maybe mean half black or something. And last year, for leaving Angela Merkel waiting to greet him at a conference while he made a call on his mobile phone. Oh no, tragedy. Despite the criticism today, Berlusconi claimed he was a respected statesman who is praised at international summits for his background as a tycoon, his 16 years of political experience, and the content of his proposals. He said he had learned from Margaret Thatcher not to waste time reading negative coverage of himself in newspapers. The former British Prime Minister, he said, had told him that her press secretary only showed her positive articles about her. It's got a list of his gaffes, so I might read that later on. But yeah, it's a bit of an inflammatory piece. There's obviously people that want to get rid of him and replace him with some other puppet or something. So maybe he's not the right sort of puppet for them. There's nothing, I don't see anything majorly offensive in anything he said. Especially, it's Italy, It's got a history of it, sort of. Maybe a bit of Nazi revivalism going on there in the background. I think he was just playing on the fact that he was speaking to youths. Yeah! Yeah. Don't know what that noise in the background. Some puppy sniffing going on there. Bizarre habits of America. Okay. Well, I'll continue where I left off. It was the Italian Prime Minister Berlusconi, Silvio Berlusconi. I was reading an article about him, and it's got a list of his hilarious gaffes in office, with the headline "Reign of Error: Berlusconi's Gaffes in Office." April 2009, shortly after an earthquake hit the city of L'Aquila, Berlusconi told the 17,000 Italians made homeless by the quake that they should see it like a weekend of camping. Yes. January 2009, dismissed the idea that increasing the number of troops on Italian streets would help stop a surge in rape cases.
Hey, Maggot.
Yeah.
You didn't even mention that this is you're filling in and doing the Maggot 2 show. You could have had like like a really cool intro thing there. Be like, "Welcome to the Maggot Show ×2" or something really awesome.
I could have, but you know.
You did.
No,
No,
it's
you
just
figured
part 2, yeah, because it's just going to be like go bumper to bumper with maggots. Maggots on the highway. Yeah, I just I didn't want to say like the Maggot Show again. Like, that'd be a bit ridiculous. Yeah, but it could have been like Maggot 2, Revenge of Maggot again. Maggots in the stomach. Yeah. So I've forgotten who I'm taking over, but I just sent to eat people anyway, so I don't really care. As long as they're tasty, and I don't have to vomit too much afterwards. Yeah, because I like Lady Diana in that sense, and because she was a cannibal and she'd like eat people alive. This was like kind of kept secret in the media, but she would just go out on the streets and start munching at people. When she has always been sick. Anyhow, yes, Berlusconi, the disgraceful Prime Minister, whatever, January 2009, dismissed the idea that increasing the number of troops on Italian streets would help stop a surge in rape cases, arguing that, yes, Lady Diana, the zombie princess, we would need as many soldiers as there are beautiful girls in Italy, which we will never manage. November 2008. At a news conference in Moscow with the Russian President Dmitry Medvedev, Berlusconi described Barack Obama as young, handsome, and tanned. Yes, from a cocoa jar. April 2008. Berlusconi caused outrage after saying Zapatero, Spain's Prime Minister, has formed a government that is too pink, something that we cannot do in Italy because there is a prevalence of Italian men, in politics, and it isn't easy to find women who are qualified. He will have problems leading them. Yeah, the joke being that gays aren't men, you know. That's what he's implying. It's Italian. Italy's like invented the machismo, you know. It's the inventor of it. It's the more fanciful way of saying macho. April 2006. On welcoming the then newly elected female MP Mara Cafagna. Yes, Cafagna. Yeah, she leaves fags in cars. To Parliament, he joked, "I am obliged to remind you of a rule in the Forza Italia Club. the Jupima Nocti, a Latin reference to the medieval law of the first night, which gave the lord of an estate the right to deflower new brides. Oh yes. June 2005. Oh, this is in reverse order, so he's done the most recent. Listen to the most recent things first. Reverse chronological order. He had brushed up all his playboy skills to persuade Finland's president Tarja Halonen to agree to host the European Food Safety Authority in Italy. July 2003, Berlusconi caused uproar at the European Parliament after replying to a heckling German MP with the comment, "Mr. Schulz, I know there is in Italy a man producing a film on the Nazi concentration camps. I would like to suggest you for the role of leader. You'll be perfect." Excuse me. Okay. BBC article: Cuba to cut 1 million public sector jobs. Yes, 1 million. If I read this one out before, I said it was like 500,000, but it's like the figure's doubled now. When I last read this article, it is like they're so efficient, so good at counting up. Maybe they thought they could chop the population in half or something. You only need your right arm and your right leg. Cuba has announced radical plans to lay off huge numbers of state employees to help revive the communist country's struggling economy. The Cuban Labor Federation said more than 1 million workers would lose their jobs, half of them by March next year. I don't know what the population of Cuba is off the top of my head. Can't be that much. Can't be that big. Well, I mean, obviously it's bigger than 1 million, but there can't be that many people in Cuba. I mean, it's a tiny place. Those laid off will be encouraged to become self-employed or join new private enterprises, on which some of the current restrictions will be eased. It is biggest shift to the private sector since the revolution in 1959. Looked like it's its biggest shit to the private sector. Cuba's communist government currently controls almost all aspects of the country's economy and employs about 85% of the workforce. A state cannot and should not continue maintaining companies, productive entities, services and budgeted sectors with bloated payrolls and losses that hurt the economy, the Labour Federation said in a statement. Job options will be increased and broadened with new forms of non-state employment, among them leasing land, cooperatives and self-employment, absorbing hundreds of thousands of workers in the coming years. They should just turn them all to beef burgers. Far more effective. Sell them to Americans, they won't notice any difference. Free enterprise. The governing Communist Party has indicated that strict rules limiting private enterprise will be relaxed and many more licenses will be issued, allowing people to become self-employed. Yeah, I mean, you could even sell it as Soylent, it's like it's in the movie, and just see how long you can get away with it. Soylent Red. Don't bother with the green. Soylent Red. Soylent White. If it's white, people get killed. And Soylent Brown if it's brown. Anyhow, existing private businesses will be allowed to employ staff for the first time. Oh, lucky pros. Well, it's not really a pro. But a minority of Cuban workers already work for themselves, for example, as hairdressers and taxi drivers, or running small family restaurants. There is also a thriving black economy, with many trades people working independently without proper permission from the state. President Raul Castro, well, it is Raul again, it was Raul the other day. Castro outlined the changes in a speech in August, saying the state's role in the economy had to be reduced. We have to end forever the notion that Cuba is the only country in the world where you can live without working, he said. Cuba's state-run economy has been gripped by a severe crisis in the past 2 years that has forced it to cut imports. it has suffered from a fall in the price for its main export, nickel, as well as a decline in tourism. Growth has also been hampered by the 48-year US trade embargo. Mr. Castrato became Cuba's leader when his brother Infidelity Castrato stepped aside because of ill health in 2006. Now, slightly savage cuts, 1 million jobs. Sort of unreal. So it's basically you're putting a million people on the street unless they've got work to get back to. Not sure if I read this one. Couple jailed for abusing young boys. I might have read this one. A couple were jailed for 2 years each today after being found guilty of subjecting 2 young boys to appalling abuse. Christina Davies, 20, and Ricky Winter, 23, both of Canterbury Road, Margate, Kent, had previously denied 8 counts of child neglect, but were found guilty following a trial at Canterbury Crown Court last month, a spokeswoman for Kent Police said. A paediatrician who treated the children told jurors it was the worst case he had ever encountered in 30 years of practice. The injuries to the boys, who are both under the age of 4 and cannot be named for legal reasons, included bites to their genitals. Davies and Winter also forced the children to stand in a corner with their hands on their heads for long periods of time and screamed in their faces on numerous occasions when they were looking after them in July last year. During the period, the boys suffered an array of injuries, including fractured bones, bruises, and bites. Following the sentencing, Acting Detective Sergeant Paul Deslands, who led the investigation, said, "This was a particularly harrowing case, and the children suffered truly sickening injuries. This is an excellent example of how Kent Police works together with other agencies to safeguard children. Our Child Abuse Investigation Unit acted swiftly in response to concerns from a number of members of the public about the boys' welfare, and, together with social services, we took the children away from a dangerous situation and prevented them from coming to any further harm. I would like to thank all the witnesses involved in the case for providing evidence and helping to bring the defendants to justice." Head of the NSPCC helpline, John Cameron, said. Yeah, I think he's related to David Cameron. NSPCC is National Society Prevention of Cruelty to Children. That isn't what he said, I'm just explaining what that acronym meant. These defenceless young children have suffered terrible neglect at the hands of those who are meant to care for them. Sadly, the cruelty these little boys have suffered is not unique. Neglect makes up nearly half of all the child protection cases known to the authorities, and this is just the tip of the iceberg. Every day, the NSPCC helpline receives calls about children being horrifically mistreated or left in danger. Though many people do call us to report children being neglected, there are others who don't act on their suspicions. Young children can't get help for themselves. You could be their only hope. We would urge anyone who has concerns about a child to act on their benefit and contact the NSPCC. Let's call the helpline number. Oh, another one, similar topic. Again in the Independent. Newborn boy dumped amongst airplane rubbish. As rubbish was carried from a plane that had just landed at Manila's airport, a security officer spied something moving in one of the bags. He opened it, sifted through the rubbish, and found a newborn baby wrapped with tissue paper and covered in blood. The baby was left for dead. It was already bluish in colour. Airport press officer Connie Bongag said he could have died in a matter of minutes. The story evoked pity and outrage around the world as Philippine authorities work today to identify a mother who apparently gave birth on a commercial flight and abandoned the child in a bin on the plane. Wouldn't the airport authorities do anything about that? On the plane. I know, it's just weird. That £6, 3 kilogram boy was among refuse unloaded by cleaners of a Gulf airplane after its arrival yesterday from Bahrain, airport officials said. The infant, still attached to the placenta, was given to an airport clinic where doctors and nurses cleaned him, gave him a checkup, wrapped him in cloth and mittens, and warmed him under a light bulb, airport doctor Maria Teresa Aguri said. He was healthy. His vital signs were okay, Nurse Kate Calvo said. Airport officials collected money to buy the baby clothes and milk, and as he fed from a bottle, the baby cried softly, Calvo said. It's like, wouldn't be that difficult to identify the mother then, would it? Just like find where all the blood was all where she was. And those airport people must have known about that. That's just weird. Airport workers named him George Francis after Gulf Air's codename GF. The mystery baby was later turned over to social welfare officers assigned at the Ninoy Aquino International Airport. Well, it can't be that much of a mystery. They just traced it from the airplane but dumped into that bin. I don't know, unless they have a run around and stuff afterwards. Airport police said they were trying to locate one female passenger whose seat near the plane's toilet was stained with blood. Well done. That'll be the big giveaway. Officials got her name from the plane's manifest, and it appeared to be Filipino. In Dubai, Gulf Air said it had launched an internal inquiry into the incident. The airline provides service throughout the Middle East. Our main priority is the welfare of the mother and baby, the airline said in an emailed response to questions. We are currently working with the local authorities in the Philippines to help them locate his mother as soon as possible. Doctors who attended... But you got the names of the people who's seating at the seats, haven't you? On the attendees list or something. It would be that difficult. This might be might be a bit of a fix in order to get more identification on airports or something, on airplanes. But I thought they had cameras internally on the planes, so they'd pick her up on that. Maybe they're just being really slack. Doctors who attended to the baby said he looked Filipino, fueling speculation in the local media that the boy's mother could be a domestic worker in the Middle East. About 1 in 10 Filipinos works abroad, many as maids and labourers in the Middle East, to escape crushing poverty and unemployment at home. If she's a migrant worker, this speaks of the ordeal our overseas workers go through, Social Welfare Secretary Corazon Soliman said. But Manila Airport Manager Jose Angel Harmedo said it was too early to draw conclusions since investigators had not yet identified the mother. Soliman said the baby will be turned over to the mother's relatives if they can be found, or put up for adoption. The government will make sure the baby will get the very best care wherever he ends up, she said. Okay, next article. Independent. Again, Broadmoor nurse admits sex with patient. A nurse at high security Broadmoor Hospital was spared a jail term today after she admitted engaging in sexual activity with a mentally ill patient. Rhoda Sibanda, 31, developed a relationship with a convicted prisoner at the psychiatric hospital in Berkshire. The pair sent affectionate letters to each other, and Sibanda, a Zimbabwean national, gave the man a ring. An onion ring. Oxford Crown Court heard. The married mother of two of Appledore, Bracknell, Berkshire, pleaded guilty to 2 counts of sexual activity by a care worker with a person with a mental disorder. Judge Julian Hall sentenced her to 6 months imprisonment suspended for 1 year. He gave her a 1-year supervision order and told her to sign the sex offenders register. She was also ordered to pay £250 costs. Prosecutor Charles Ward Jackson said the male patient was a rapist who also had been convicted of arson. Mr. Ward Jackson said Sibanda developed a relationship with the man who suffers from severe personality disorder after she was transferred to his ward and became his primary carer. He told the court the patient sent Sibanda a letter revealing his feelings, which she rejected at first. In an interview, the patient, who cannot be named for legal reasons, said, "She told me she had changed her mind. and I said that I loved her, and she replied saying that she loved me. She told me to wait until she was on night duty so we could see each other in more intimate circumstances. Mr. Ward Jackson said the pair spoke and held hands through the hatch on the patient's bedroom door, which was locked at night. He said on the 2 occasions relating to the charges, Sibanda contravened the rules of the hospital by entering the patient's room at night. On the first time she visited his room, the pair kissed, and on the second instance there was non-penetrative sexual touching between them. Their relationship was brought to a halt when a therapy assistant noted the pair acting strangely. Mr. Ward Jackson said, "A therapy assistant, Dean of Dilution, noticed the complainant and Mrs. Sibanda walking towards a laundry room in an area where patients are not normally permitted to be. The patient later approached Mr. Diluter and said he was worried that he was in trouble and would be locked in isolation. He said he was having a sexual relationship with a nurse, and he said they had seen each other on 5 occasions, that they were in love with each other, and planned to move to their native Zimbabwe when he left the hospital. The whole thing was making him depressed, and he felt that he could not cope with the situation. He showed him affectionate letters that she had written, and a ring that she had given to him." Mr. Doluta reported the situation to senior management. Sibanda was suspended, and the police were called in. Officers searching Sibanda's home found some of the patient's clothing and a personal letter she had written to him. Sibanda was later sacked for breaching security protocols. The sexual acts are alleged to have taken place at the psychiatric hospital between June 1st and August 28th last year. Judge Julian Hall told her, "You should have been in control of what you did, and you should have, at the very least, told your supervisors what was happening. The regimes at hospital like Broadmoor are of necessity. Both staff and patients are vulnerable, and they become more vulnerable if the relationship between the staff and the patients becomes too close. The hospital is home to some of England's most notoriously mentally ill criminals." Well, most notorious. I mean, it's a very small semantic difference. It houses Peter Sutcliffe, the Yorkshire Ripper, who was jailed for the murder of 13 women and the attempted murder of others in Yorkshire and Greater Manchester in 1970s. Yeah, because I think there's Broadmoor Prison as well, which is quite infamous. It's one of the worst ones. It's got housing the worst people in it. Next one, I might as well do this one for a change. MSNBC, so Stephen Hawking says time travel should be possible.
Time travel should be possible. Theory of relativity allows for the potential to warp space-time so much that a traveler could leave Earth in a rocket and return home before he or she ever departed.
There you go. I'm not doing his voice. I could do for a laugh though. Humans must continue exploring space, if only for the romance of it. Oh yeah, you've really explored whole bunches of it, haven't you? Like, a couple of 100,000 miles or something in one direction. And time travel should be possible, but engineers will have to figure out a way to warp space-time, to be sure, famed physicist Stephen Hawking says. Hawking spoke out yes, on these subjects and others in a Sunday interview with Parade magazine. It's similar to like Razzle and I don't know, various other porn mags, to discuss his new book, The Grand Design, with Caltech physicist Leonard Mlodinow. Caltech is Californian technology, isn't it? In the interview, In the interview, Hawking says he supports the continuation of human space exploration. Well, that's so nice. I mean, I think everybody was waiting for you to give your opinion on that. Robots may be good at gathering data, he argued, but they shouldn't entirely replace people in space. Seeing astronauts floating around in all that vast blackness is inspiring, and people need inspiration, he added. Science is not only a disciple of reason, but also one of romance and passion, Hawking told Parade. On paper, time travel should also be in cards. Yes, time travel should be in cards. Because of Albert Einstein's general theory of relativity. And it does say that, time travel should be in cards, and I get it. Which allows for the potential to warp space-time so much that a traveller could leave Earth in a rocket and return home before he or she ever departed. Bullshit. Hawking said, of course, that means you have to be able to warp space-time, which is pretty tricky. I showed it would require matter with negative energy density, which may not be available, Hawking said. Hawking also toucheed on the need for some cosmic perspective too. He compared humanity's view of the universe to that of a goldfish looking out of its bowl, saying that we can't be sure our view is the correct one. We might be in a giant goldfish bowl, for there is no single absolute picture of reality, he added. The Razzle interview also touched on other topics such as Hawking's family life. Ooh, exciting. His hopes for science to transform a troubled African continent and his commitment to helping regular people understand basic facts. Basic myths about the cosmos. I think I put the wrong word there. Basic myths. Most people don't have time to master the very mathematical details of theoretical physics, he says. But I believe everyone can and should have a broad picture of how the universe operates and our place in it. This is how we have tried to convey in my books. This is what I have tried to convey in my books. But Hawking did not address some of his other views, which have generated a lot of media buzz recently. In an April-ish episode of his TV series, April 1st probably, Into the Universe with Stephen Hawking, the physicist warned humanity not to be so rapturously eager to find extraterrestrial life in your nose. Advanced spacefaring civilization could be on the prowl for resources, he said on the show. They may be interested only in conquering and strip mining the Earth, not getting to know us. And in his new book, Hawking argues that God is not necessary to explain the universe. The law of gravity is, and it's just showing more text. Enough itself. Oh, what? I think even EM equals MC squared, the Einstein equation, he had to insert a value for gravity because nobody could actually find a value for it, so they just stick in this value for gravity that they've agreed because the equations don't actually work. They don't actually add up successfully. There's something missing in all their equations, and they just assign gravity to it. They've got massive spin, millions and millions of pounds or billions of pounds and dollars spent on spin, so you think it's like, oh, it must be true. It's like, no, they don't really know. Because there is a law such as gravity, the universe can and will create itself from nothing, he wrote. Spontaneous creation is the reason there is something rather than nothing. Why the universe exists, why we exist. It is not necessary to invoke God to light the blue touch paper and set the universe going. If you know what I'm talking about, he does talk like that because he doesn't speak. He can't speak at all. He speaks through this machine. I think he's more likely to be a vegetable, and it's like just somebody's like got a remote voice, doing his speeches, typing it all out for him, and he's just like there, like a monkey, not really knowing what he's typing. Hawking is now almost completely paralysed. Yeah, totally coincidence. By the neurodegenerative disease amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, ALS, also known as Lou Gehrig's disease. Yeah, Lou Gehrig invented the term. I know. Just try and make it. They give it a name, put somebody's name to it. It's like it's a big discovery, as if it's like, oh yeah, it is actually really common. Yeah, because that's why he's like the only person with the equipment he's got. He answered the interviewer's questions by twitching one muscle in his right cheek, sending an infrared beam to a computer that translates the twitches into words. Oh yeah, you couldn't be possibly tricked by that, could you? Oh, it's definitely Tim talking. You can see him twitching. It's not just like some vegetable you took out of a hospital, is it? Despite his disability, Hawking says he has lived a full life. I'm sure he has. I have my ass wiped by nurses and everything. I am a scat man. He has children and grandchildren and has travelled the world. He has experienced weightlessness, taking a flight in 2007 aboard a plane whose roller coaster motion generated zero gravity conditions for short spells. Convenient use of the word spell there. In the parade interview, Hawking says he has no plans to slow down. I have travelled the world from the Arctic to zero gravity, he said. Perhaps one day I will go into space. And the whole planet will blow up and he'll just be there spinning around in his wheelchair. Oh no, yeah, okay. Yeah, it was another article I was going to read was Cuba to lay off 500,000 state workers, and apparently that's already been superseded. Okay, and back to the Independent. Israel refuses to meet European ministers for settlement talks. Yes, it's terrible. It's just like that Benjamin Netanyahu does look like Mel Brooks to me. I just keep looking at him and saying, it's Mel Brooks. Jerusalem says EU demand for discussions on eve of Yom Kippur, it's like we'll eat fish, is highly insensitive. Israel has said it will not meet a delegation of European foreign ministers, including William Hague, this week as diplomatic pressure mounts on its government to extend a 10-month settlement freeze that ends next week. The Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu yesterday told Tony Blair, the Middle East envoy, that current restrictions on building West Bank Jewish settlements will not remain, but there will be some limits on construction. We will not freeze the lives of the residents, he said. Israel has bridled at what it calls an insensitive European demand to hold meetings on the eve of Yom Kippur, the holiest day in the Jewish calendar. The ministers from Britain, France, Italy, Spain and Germany had apparently proposed to hold meetings on Friday morning, hours before the start of the Yom Kippur fast or feast, where they feast on fish. There's a feast of fish. They showed very high insensitivity to this special date. It's just not done, said Yigal Pamor, a foreign ministry spokesman. Everyone is away. No meetings are planned. All agendas are empty. We suggested alternative dates, which were refused. The Israeli newspaper Haaretz reported the meetings had been cancelled because the European ministers intended to pressure Israel over the settlements. A British embassy spokeswoman said Mr. Hague's trip was postponed because of scheduling difficulties. The spat comes amid Israel's growing irritation that EU countries excluded from the US-sponsored bilateral peace talks between Israel and the Palestinians are bidding for an 11th hour seat at the negotiating table. Hillary Clinton, the US Secretary of State, Mr. Netanyahu, and Mahmoud Abbas, the Palestinian Authority president, are to meet for a second round of discussions in Egypt on Tuesday, 2 weeks after talks were launched amid much fanfare in Washington. President Barack Obama has made achieving peace in the Middle East a key tenet of his foreign policy, and ahead of midterm elections has staked his political reputation on bringing the reluctant partners to direct talks. They can't just barge into the negotiating room when they're not involved in the process that led to those talks, said an Israeli government official. Oh, I thought it was Barack. I was doing my rubbish American impression. Where were they when the process was being laboriously pushed forward? Europe's sense of exclusion was underscored when the French Foreign Minister Bernard Kouchner criticised Baroness Catherine Ashton, the EU's foreign policy chief, after she opted to fly to China rather than join the opening of direct peace talks at the White House 2 weeks ago. Baroness Ashton responded on Friday, saying she had no wish to be a second-tier participant in Washington when she could bring more influence to bear in discussions in China. Her view was supported yesterday by at least one European diplomat in Jerusalem, who said that it was not clear what role the Europeans would play at this stage. It is not obvious that the EU being in the room for the direct bilateral talks makes much sense when the US has to hold the ring piece, the diplomat said. A beleaguered Mr. Netanyahu is likely to come under pressure on the issue of settlements during the second round of talks, an obstacle that has loomed large over the process. Mr. Obama upped the stakes on Friday when he urged Israel to extend the settlement freeze, which expires at the end of September. Just got to check something. Trying to upload something. I was trying to upload the previous show, and it just keeps on coming up with the same crappy message. Suppressed invention thing. I'll read that out if I've got time. Now to find the article again. What I said to PM Netanyahu is that given so far the talks are moving forward in a constructive way, it makes sense to extend the moratorium, he said in remarks that he has previously resisted making publicly. Pushed to respond, Mr. Netanyahu appeared to hang back from an extension in an apparent sop to his pro-settler coalition partners, who have threatened to leave the coalition if he calls for a new freeze. But he also said that not all of the tens of thousands of housing units in the pipeline would go ahead. Remarks aimed at the Palestinians, who have threatened to quit the talks if settlement construction is not stopped. Palestinians remained adamant yesterday that they would accept nothing less than a freeze. Mr. Freeze and the Iceman. The Iceman cometh. Our position is very clear, said Hussam Zomlo, a Palestinian spokesman. Should the settlement construction and expansion continue, we are out. Palestinians who want a state based on the West Bank, Gaza and East Jerusalem have agreed in principle to limited land swaps, but have insisted that Israel refrain from putting facts on the ground before an agreement is reached. Okay, just time to do some rummaging. Got loads of articles left to go. Just pick one. It's not a stupid spam message. Okay, this one's in the Daily Mail. Over the counter. Now girls of 13 will be given the pill without having to see a GP. Girls as young as 13 are to be given the contraceptive pill without seeing a doctor. Let's check what's in the chat room. The chat's having sound problems. Okay. I don't know if it affects the recording, but I can't tell. There's no way I can tell if it's really bad. For the first time, teenagers, but below the legal age of consent, will be able to get the pill from high street pharmacies in a project that could eventually be adopted nationwide. The scheme is being introduced to try to give young girls greater access to contraception in an attempt to reduce soaring underage pregnancy rates, but critics point out that such a move could actually encourage girls to become more promiscuous, effectively giving them a license to have more sex. There is no evidence that providing the pill on demand reduces teenage pregnancies, and there are concerns that it also increases the risk of sexually transmitted infections by making youngsters less inclined to use condoms. The pill also has rare but potentially dangerous side effects, including blood clots, and there are fears pharmacists may not carry out their same health checks as doctors. The trial scheme will see high street chains, including Boots, Lloyd's, and smaller independent chemists on the Isle of Wight, will begin providing the pill to girls aged 13 to 25 without a doctor's prescription. Those who visit the chemist for the morning after pill, the emergency contraceptive, will also be offered a month's supply of the progesterone-only pill. I was going to say that's also it's known as a hangover pill because it cures your hangover, but that'd just be silly, so I didn't say it. Under current rules, women must visit their GP for a thorough consultation before they are able to get the contraceptive, but under the scheme, which will begin in November, 10 pharmacies will provide the pill without the need for a doctor's prescription, under the direction of the Isle of Wight Primary Care Trust. The Isle of Wights, it's full of wights and other sort of dragons. If the girls want additional supplies, they will have to make an appointment with their GP or a sexual health nurse. They will not be able to get more from the chemist. Although the morning after pill is already available at pharmacies without direct authorization from a doctor, the government has so far been reluctant to allow chemists to sell the pill over the counter. A pilot scheme in Southwark and Lambeth, 2 areas of London with the highest teenage pregnancy rates, allows women to get their pill from a few pharmacies, but only if they're over 16, above the age of consent. Critics say the latest initiative involving girls as young as 13 is dangerous. Labour MP Jim Dobbin said, "At that age, girls are too young to make up their minds about these sorts of issues. Parents should be involved. There are also dangers associated with the pill, and we don't know what harm it can cause over the long term. The pill doesn't protect against sexually transmitted infections at all." Norman Wells, director of the pressure group Family and Youth Concern, said, "This scheme is giving girls as young as 13 a license to engage in illegal sexual activity and denying them the protection that the law has on the age of consent. The law on the age of consent is intended to give. It will inevitably lead to boys putting even more pressure on girls to have sex. The PCT is being extremely naive if it imagines that making it easier for teenage girls to obtain the pill would bring any public health benefit. If the scheme is deemed a success, it is likely it will be taken up by other trusts across the country. Kevin Noble of Isle of Wight PCT said, "We have all sorts of ideas on the Isle of Wight that can hopefully improve emergency care. I think it's an improvement on services that are out there. We will use the progesterone-only pill, which is the safest type of contraception out there. I hope that other trusts will look at what we do here and will say, we'll do that too. Okay, the Globe and Mail. Next one. More families are deciding that school's out forever. It's a story one. It's a story one, by the looks of it. Kate Hammer. Kate Hammer, she smashes cakes with hammers. It has been Saturday in the Lorecchio household for nearly a decade. The family's three teenagers, Michael, Lissy and Joseph, have known nothing of alarm clocks, races for the school bus, arguments over homework or report card angst since their parents started unschooling them in 2002. The small but growing movement the have joined is known by many other names, employers, including, along with their family, because I can't remember their name, can't bother pronouncing their name, including deschooling, life learning, and edupunk. That's crap. At base, unschooling is homeschooling returned to its post-war progressive roots, far from the Bible-thumping mould that has come to dominate the modern image of homeschoolers. An unschooling family mostly just looks like a family living life, hanging out on the weekend, but there is lots of learning going on. Yeah, there is a lot of learning going on. Pam Larekia mother. I know, it's traditional. Traditional to diss homeschooling people for using incorrect grammar. Unschooling takes children out of schools, but unlike a lot of homeschool approaches, it's a tradition of the Maggot anyway. Doesn't matter about your tradition. Tradition of the Maggot, invented today. It doesn't import the classroom into the home. It does away altogether with educational clutter such as curricula and grades. Unschoolers maintain their child's learning should be curiosity driven rather than dictated by teachers and textbooks, and that forcing kids to adhere to curricula squashes their natural inclination to explore and ask questions. To an outsider, unschooling may sound like pedagogical tofu, a shapeless, idealistic substitute for an education, but there's a growing consensus that unschoolers might be onto something. Their ideals have been quietly infiltrating public education. Yeah, I mean, in the sort of like regular government schooling things, everybody's getting A's. It looks like last time I looked, it was like 99.75% of people who went to school got A passes. I was just, a little thick anyway, but doesn't matter. It's just a distraction. It's just like brainwashing. It proves that you got finished your brainwashing. Probably be better off with a H, like in Red Dwarf, Rimmer had. Shows you're an artificial person. Homeschooling, homeschoolers and unschoolers in particular, United Nations scholars, are by nature difficult to count, but observers say that, thanks in part to social networking and the blooming of internet resources, their movement is growing. What, you're going to learn your education system through Facebook? You're schooling through Facebook, are you? One sign is that dozens of unschooling families will converge near Ms. Larry home this weekend for the 5th annual Toronto Unschooling Conference. Larikia there. There you go, Larikia. She reeks. So that's translation from the French. There you go. Another is that since 2002, unschoolers have had their own publication, Life Learning Magazine. More recently, it has metamorphosized into lifelearningmagazine.com. Meanwhile, school boards and education ministries are embracing experiential learning. There was a time when students were drilled and heavily tested on rote memory, such as the names and dates of sovereign in Britain, whatever, British origins. But research suggests that this is a temporary, limited form of learning. Kids gain more when they can ask questions, and learning is tied to emotion. I don't know, I was the opposite of that. I was more like, if you've seen the movie Warlords of Atlantis, where they stick that helmet on the guy, and I think they're either feeding him information or draining him of information. I would prefer something like that. Just like, give me the data. Data, I need data. But then, I don't know, asking questions and stuff might be useful, but it just sort of interrupts the flow. Just feed me more data, just like in the library, just go input. Like in Short Circuit, I know. The change in thinking has been slow. Usually is. But it surfaces in the expansion of high school co-op programs, or the emphasis on play in the new full-day kindergarten curriculum Ontario launched this week. Some children thrive in the classroom, and others don't, and despite the best of intentions, the system sorts them into winners and losers. Recent initiatives by education ministries and school boards to shrink dropout rates, promote alternative schools, and improve kindergartens are all fundamentally an effort to reduce the sorting. Unschooling's underlying idea is that all kids are wieners. A liberation movement for the love of learning. Isn't that Sophia or something, the love of learning? So related to the name Sophia. The foundational tome of the unschooler is How Children Fail. You'll fail. Do 50 press ups. The first book by an American teacher named John Holt, published in 1964. The writer suggested that smart children struggle because they are afraid, bored, and confused. Afraid, bored, and confused. Okay. They are afraid, above all else, of failing, of disappointing, or displeasing the many anxious adults around them, whose limitless hopes and expectations for them hang over their heads like a cloud. I've already said, Iron Womb policy, abandon the family, doesn't work. Have to have Maggot Island where it all carries out. Mr. Holt supports his thesis with observations from a sort of classroom diary he kept through the 1950s and 60s. He concludes that a child who is learning naturally, following his curiosity where it leads him, adding to his mental model of reality whatever he needs and can find a place for, and rejecting without fear or guilt what he does not need, is growing in knowledge, in the love of learning, in the ability to learn. The idea puts a lot of faith in children, their innate interest in learning, and in their intelligence. It also restores faith in parents, returning some control over their children's growth that they handed to educators and politicians more than a century ago. Wheel goes round 180 degrees. This was the philosophy. I added that bit. Just means, it's just like a cycle, It's like then they're gonna find out the parents are actually an appalling influence on the children and just taught them a load of crap, and that would be too late. And then there'll be more enforced education. It's even more strict than the last one. So that's what I meant about 180 degrees. It's just the wheel's halfway through. This was the philosophy behind homeschooling when it emerged in the 1960s and 70s as a way for children to learn from the world around them. Then, in the past few decades, homeschooling was embraced by the Christian right, who saw it as a way that kids could be shielded from the secular world. Then, the internet galvanized unschoolers into looking at YouTube clips and chatting to each other on Facebook. It provided a support network for parents seeking alternatives and made satisfying the whims of a child's curiosity a lot easier. Just leave him on the internet, he can look for porn. Why is the sky blue? Google it. How do you make a baking soda volcano? Ask YouTube. This type of experiential learning suits boys, and concrete learners in particular. I love to find out about concrete. Who are set up to fail in the regular school system, according to Ron Hanson, a professor at the University of Western Ontario. He says the school system favours abstract learners, the half of the population who find it easy to think in symbols and signs, for whom written work comes naturally. Concrete learners need action. They need projects. They need to be tactile as well as using their eyes and ears. Although Mr. Hanson believes that unschooling might not work in every home, he thinks its emphasis on experiential learning is laudable and has a thing or two to teach public education. There is an obvious objection, and one familiar to homeschoolers of any stripe. Does any kid who hangs out all day with his parents and lives by the whims of his own curiosity have any hope of being anything less than a dork? It's not so stupid after all. Though unschooled children tend to have highly developed critical thinking and problem solving skills, some find it difficult to socialise with large groups of children. Yeah. I don't imagine they'd learn much about endurance either. According to Paige Fisher, I don't like that, I'll walk off, an instructor in education at Vancouver Island University who has observed unschooled children. Another concern, more specific to unschooling, is if children's education is formed by their own interests or solely by those of their parents. There are likely to be gaps. Individual children might be happy, but it's not clear that this makes for an autonomous or well-rounded adult, or for a better community. Christopher Lubienski, an associate professor at the University of Illinois, writes by email. Structured learning with external direction can force people to experience things that they wouldn't otherwise, and quite often find new interests, ones that may also have some wider social value. Off the bus, but not entirely off the grid. This week, as most children kissed their parents goodbye aboard yellow school buses, a group of homeschooling families gathered in a park in Toronto's West End for a welcome back to not school party. Welcome back to snot school party! Yay! They represented a fair cross-section of the city's homeschooling community, and most would place themselves somewhere on the unschooling spectrum. Generally white and well-educated, of course, because they got parents who can afford that crap. The unschoolers were the kind of middle or upper middle class parents who don't dream of a house in Rosedale, because they already have one, or their kids graduating from medical school. They didn't fit any other stereotypes, except they were all able to stay home at least part-time, and they knew their kids' daily lives in a detail that made the average helicopter parent seem negligent. Bloody blah blah. Goes on. There's only 1 minute left, so I'll just check the chat room. They're saying that the chat room's having problems. Oh, sound problems. Okay. Well, it sort of goes along in that line. I'll just see what if we've got any amazing headlines to finish off with. Do 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 do. Huh. Okay. This one's quite good. Looks like it might be in overtime, so I haven't heard any closing music yet. Let's do this one anyway and end. Government accused of abuse of power after cancelling 2011's Queen's speech. Haha. Changed to tie in with introduction of fixed-term parliaments means next Queen's speech will not take place until the spring of 2012. Oh, there you go. Woo!